Faster By. Good afternoon. Welcome to Mannin Line on Manx Radio. Today, we're with the heritage campaigner, we're with the filmmaker, we're the man who's been following heritage on the Isle of Man for probably as long as he's been alive. Charles Gard is on Manx Radio. You may have seen the two videos that he made looking at the state of our heritage, our infrastructure on the Isle of Man. And if you want to talk to Charles, anything you want to raise, then text, email, call and WhatsApp between now and then. We've got a lot of ground to cover in the next hour, so let's get to the bottom of the state of our heritage. And Faster Mike, good afternoon, Charles.
Good afternoon.
I know, Charles, you don't actually want to be here. You didn't like making these videos, and I know it filled you with a sense of despair.
Absolutely. I've spent 40 or more years making films about the beautiful Isle of Man. I've always tried to show it at its best and its fantastic history and archaeology and so on. But so many people were going on about the state of certain aspects of the island and, of course, our heritage being smashed up and led to decay. I thought I'd better do a video, and last year I genuinely thought that after a few hundred I would get trolled and there'd be such despair at me doing this that I'd take it down and hide in a corner. What I wasn't expecting is the number of views and, in fact, the public reaction, which is similar to this year, where people are saying, actually, we agree with this. Why doesn't somebody do something?
Did you expect to have that level of support for something like this?
No, I didn't. No. Last year, some MHKs did email me, as I say at the beginning of this video, saying, we've been asking questions about this. We've been trying to get these things done. But this year, there hasn't been any response at all, except one MHK who did have a coffee with me. But other than that, I don't expect them to ring me up and say, we agree with you, Charles. What I actually want them to do is to do something.
Can you get to the bottom, Charles, of how we got here? How has this happened? Is it a single strand of thought, a single policy? But why are we in this state?
It's not a single policy, but it goes back so long. I first started reporting Tynwald in 1982 when David Collister and I started Mandate. I've sat through 70 sittings of Tynwald just in that decade. And I remember the then tourist minister saying that Castle Rushen was just a pile of old stones, which is technically correct. It is old stones piled on each other, but the sum of that is somewhat more than just the stones. And I'm afraid a lot of this is the attitude from the top. If you been campaigning for years to get buildings registered. If you knock buildings down, there's no outcry, there's no ethos in amongst the members that this is a precious asset for the island. The fact that the whole transport system is being reviewed and this business with the horse trams just shows there just doesn't seem to be the interest there. There's no one banging the drum for this. So it's sort of an attitude generally from the top, which permeates down to all regions.
OK, well, we'll certainly get into the horse trams and heritage rail in general. Howard, Fastamai, Howard, you're live with Charles Gard.
Hello, Andy. Hello, Charles.
Hello.
We know one another.
Right.
Yes, camera obscura.
Oh, yes.
But no, you're quite right in what you say with the attitude from the top. I've encountered that several times in different approaches I've made to people. And they say yes, no, and then it's just to pacify, and then they walk away and they forget all about it. And instead of where we had an active tourist industry, tourist board, as they were calling themselves, and we had people that were genuinely interested and would encourage it, that seemed to have gone by the by now because of the financial sector and now the e-gaming sector, which seems to be taking up the area that should be occupied and encouraging people. And you've got one department there saying we're going to encourage 500,000 people a year to come to the island. Well, on that stroke, they're on a loser because a lot of people do come and say it's a beautiful place and compliment on the cleanliness of everything. But the attitude of government towards helping this industry out, it seems to be very, very low. And this putting off the horse trams, it was built into the scheme on the promenade, and now they're saying they're not going to talk about it again until 2024. by that time they'd be getting themselves prepared for a re-election. And it'll be a good talking point on promises. And as you know yourself, promises have got a drawer full of empty promises.
Before we get to the horse trams, Howard, why did you get involved with the Victorian Society and the Camera Obscura?
Well, Peter Kelly, who's with the Camera Obscura and the Victorian Society, was very helpful to me in the past. And then I saw an advert looking for volunteers, and I thought, well, I'll put something back into what was part of the island heritage. And I don't know how long I've been there now. We're in double figures, but it's an interest. And I love going up to the Camera Obscura because it is part of our history. And without history, we don't have a future.
Charles, the Camera Obscura, it's fair to say, was in danger for a while, wasn't it? It was in pieces.
It was, and I must pay a public tribute to Howard, who does a fabulous job up there. I mean, he's one of the key people. And the Victorian Society took it over because no one else could be found to operate it at the weekend. It was in dire straits. It is a success story as far as I'm concerned because the government bought it and they did a brilliant job restoring it. And you know, we get thousands of people up there every year. Lots of local people come and lots of visitors come as well. So that is a success story. But as Howard says, there was a time, I mean, I was born in a boarding house on the Prom. I know exactly how the summers were. The tourist board was a big department with active people. They were actually organising events. They were going to all the trade shows. Hundreds of thousands of brochures were printed every year. But as tourism declined, the government seemed to lose the will with it. And along came, as Howard said, the finance sector, e-gaming and all the rest of it. But it is still a huge untapped market.
And do you think that's because, if you like, cold water tourism, the bucket and spade brigade fell off a cliff after the millennium year was enormous. But then obviously throughout the 80s, we were in financial dire straits. And when the finance sector came to the rescue, do you think tourism just shuffled to the back of the queue?
No, it wasn't because of that. It's because that people wanted bucket and spade, but they could get that with guaranteed sun in Spain.
Right.
That was what really did it for us. And bizarrely, our hoteliers were all going to Spain themselves in the winter for their holidays, but expecting everybody else to come here in the summer. And I often wonder if with global warming and perhaps air travel being less politically correct, whether the British seaside holiday may see a revival. I think Visit Isle of Man and their new head, Deborah Heather, are doing a brilliant job. They're very enthusiastic and they know they've got a great product to offer here. And I just hope it develops in the way it should.
Howard?
Well, I remember years ago, and Charles, you probably remember this, after Leonard Bond, tourist board, and then they realised that the tourist industry was falling away. I know myself it was because I drove coaches for quite a number of years, and you could see the numbers dropping away rapidly. And they, if I remember, and you can correct me on this, they said, we'll just let it slide away gently into the ether. In other words, we'll gradually phase it out and we'll move on to pastures new. And that's where the tourist industry disappeared from the Isle of Man.
Well, I don't think it was a positive decision like that. I remember that the hoteliers on Loch Prom, for example, were desperate to get change of use for many of those hotels in the 80s. But the government wouldn't allow them because they said this is the tourist sector. And people were doing bed and breakfast for £3 or £4 a night. You could buy one of those hotels for £12,000. People were desperate to get out of the industry. And the government... Well, I don't know. It was an impossible situation at the time, and every seaside resort in Britain was suffering from it. But there is a new way of looking at it now. We have totally reformulated our offer, and we've got our heritage and so on, and the beautiful scenery and the kayaking and all that sort of stuff. And as a package, it's a fabulous place to come, which is why it's so worrying that... at the same time as you've said they want 500,000 people here a year, we can't afford to run a horse with a tram along the promenade, which is not too much to ask. It's been there for 150 years, but this government is incapable of getting it back. And they're now reviewing the whole function and value of our world-beating, world-unique heritage railway. I mean, which way are they pulling on this?
Yeah, our great-granddaughter and the school went out yesterday on the train, and she's 6, And the school, St Thomas's School, went down south on the train, and all the children had a thoroughly good day out, and they'd never been on the train before.
Yeah.
Well, that's the future of the trains, the children.
But just look at them in the week and at the weekend. They are rammed. People love them.
Yep. And they've just renovated 2 of the coaches to the old colour scheme.
Yeah, and they're wonderfully run.
Really good.
They've got a great team running them, and it's not just the government subsidy that they should be calculating and the ticket sales. It's the wider spread of the benefit to the economy. The last time this survey was done, it was discovered the government put in £3 or £4 million, but the consultant said that the value to the Isle of Man was £11 million. So it's not a subsidy, it's an investment, because all those people coming here are in hotels, they're spending money everywhere, and that's what we want.
Okay, all right, thanks, Howard.
Okay, thanks, Charles.
All right, good to hear from you. And Mark, you're live with Charles Gard.
Hello, Andy. Hello, Charles. How's things going?
Well, parts of it are good.
Very good. I'd like to make 2 points, if I may. But first of all, I'd like to thank Charles for all the hard work he's doing. I do genuinely think that what you're doing is going above and beyond the pale for an individual like yourself. And I don't think you get anywhere near the thanks that you definitely deserve from the Manx people. So on behalf of them, thank you so much for everything you're doing, Charles.
Well, that's very kind of you. The thanks I really want is for someone in Tynwald to do something, and I think we all want that.
All right. Well, the 2 things I'd like to have a chat with you about, they're both easy to answer. I got very, very upset a while back when they demolished the old bus station, because that was a place of my childhood. I used to love playing in there. And secondly, my wife and I went to Dublin a couple of years ago, and one of the biggest attractions in Dublin was a Victorian prison. Outside with the exception of the Guinness factory tour, which of course was bound to be the biggest draw, the number of people that went on this Victorian prison tour was ridiculously high. So why did we just demolish that prison over here? We could have turned it into a tourist attraction. And another quick one, why did we pull the bus station down and not think of what was going to go up in its place?
2 very good questions. I'm not responsible, of course, for the pulling of those down, but I do remember that bus station. It was where you checked in fact, for Ronaldsway flights, and there was facilities there. There was a shop. There were bus timetables. It seemed to me a no-brainer.
The newsagent, wasn't there?
And the newsagent, absolutely. It was just a no-brainer. You want a bus station. What is the bus station now? It's a line along the pavement with a few shelters that people get soaked in when the rain's coming in the right direction. Why they haven't done anything with that, who knows? And the prison, well, that was an absolute scandal, because at least the red brick part was a brilliant Victorian building. And I've heard so many people say, why wasn't it registered? Which is a question we've been asking for decades. Why don't you get on and do all this registration? It should have been kept, of course. But again, you asked the question, I asked the question to the Minister about Homefield that was demolished, eyes glazed over, just not interested. It's not in people's cultural understanding that these things are valuable and they are an asset and they can be made to work for the economy.
The problem is, Charles, that people like myself, I mean, I'm 61, I'm Manx born and bred, and I'm looking around this island and I'm not recognising anything from when I was a child. And when you point out, to your children and your grandchildren, where that estate was, it was fields, and where that big lump of land is, there was a prison. They just can't see it. They don't recognise anything from what I remember. And I'm probably assuming what you remember too.
It's very telling that, because there are 2 incidents that happened where we nearly lost the Laxey Wheel. It was only that Edwin Neal bought it privately. And, of course, the Gaiety Theatre was scheduled for demolition, and the secretary to the Palace and Derby Castle Company refused to sign the demolition form and contacted Len Bond, who we've just heard about. We were within a moment of losing those, and you would have been showing your family, there used to be a theatre here, and the world's greatest water wheel used to be there. So we mustn't take these things for granted, because some of them are only saved by the skin of their teeth. And that's why a change of attitude is desperately needed. And talking of which, there is this major report, the final report of the Select Committee on Built Heritage. It's just been published, and maybe I could talk about that later. But this is the chance for Tynwald, when it debates it in November, to actually do something useful in this area.
Okay, all right. Thanks, Mark.
No problem. Thank you.
Good to hear from you. So let's talk about the railways and this report that's happening about the heritage railways. First of all, let's take the horse trams. At the moment, there was a decision, I think 2 or 3 decisions in Tynwald, the horse trams would go to the sea terminal. Am I right?
You are right. And if I may just raise another issue here, Andy, I've taken a bit of advice from some very high-powered people in the last few days about this. I've now realised, after 40 years of watching it, that a Tynwald resolution is pretty well meaningless. It is meaningless. Because if you direct the minister, or it's called a declaratory resolution, Tynwald is of the opinion that this will happen. If the minister doesn't want to do it, they won't do it, and there's no comeback on it. There is no legal requirement for the minister to carry it out. Now, of course, Tynwald has to approve the budgets, and no one is allowed to spend any money without Tynwald debating the budget and then approving it. And if a minister needs more money for the health or education or whatever in the year, they have to come back to it. But this report on the built heritage, it's 520 pages long. It's a brilliant job that Marlene Masker and her colleagues on the Select Committee, Bill Henderson and Jason Morehouse, have done. It's going to be a massive thing for members to read. There are 19 recommendations in it, and each one of these recommendations will have to be voted on by Tynwald in November. And when they voted on them, they are meaningless, because although they're instructing or saying that we recommend the Council of Ministers does this or some other minister does that, there's no legal requirement and there's no sanction if they don't do it. And I find this extremely disturbing, because members come out of those debates thinking, right, we've sorted this. Well, no, you haven't. You can vote until you're blue in the face for the horse trams to go back to the sea terminal, and they're still not there. There's no intention of doing it, and they may or may not bring back a financial resolution at some point. And even then, if the members vote for yes, if the minister doesn't want to do it, he doesn't have to. And this is a kind of a sham that's going on. I think people need to realise that what Tynwald votes for doesn't necessarily happen.
So it's purely advisory.
It is purely advisory. It says here, recommendation 1, that Tynwald affirms its commitment towards this, that and the other. Well, I mean, so Tynwald votes yes, and it's a unanimous vote. It's meaningless because no one actually has to do anything. And I'm wondering, should legislation be brought in so on some occasions Tynwald can vote and it is legally binding on the minister to do what our elected representatives have told them to do.
So where are we with the horse trams?
Well, we're nowhere with them, are we?
Castlemona Avenue.
Well, that's where they are ending, and everybody knows it's a nonsense place. There's nowhere to park a coach. All the people who are coming off the cruise ships and getting into coaches, they're staying along Loch Prom here or in the Sefton or whatever. They're not going to walk all the way down there to get on the horse tram. And the horse trams used to deliver thousands of people a year to the Manx Electric Railway. And it's just, who says that you can do this without consulting us? And the minister is going to come back for the money. And I've already said on the radio and been criticised by him for saying it. We all thought the money had been included in previous votes. I said the money had been purloined, and as you see in the video, I was told I can't use that word. It's not been purloined. And I know other people have texted him and asked him, well, where is that money? And there is no answer. And why is no one in Tynwald saying, actually, the prom was overspent by X million pounds, who knows how much? Is there going to be any inquiry or accountability on that? I asked a member that, and they said, I'm sure the Public Accounts Committee will be doing something. Well, I mean, that's not good enough. Where has this money gone? And if we voted for it already, it must have been spent on something else if it's not there now. Isn't that blindingly obvious?
So do you think, in your heart of hearts, that the horse trams will ever run from the War Memorial to the sea terminal?
Well, I did ask a member if a vote for Tynwald was put in Tynwald now, asking for this extra money, however that's going to be, would it get carried? And he said he thought it would. But, I mean, it's not going to happen, this vote, until well on into the year. And, of course, the government's got enormous pressures, as we know, with the health system and education and all the things they've got to spend money on. But it's probably naive to say they can find these millions if they need them for, emergencies and for this new boat that's coming in on Sunday. All money that needs to be spent. And when it comes to money that's already been allocated, then that's a different matter. And that's what's so bizarre about it.
So, I mean, is there a perception of disconnect between this then, or is there a genuine disconnect?
There is a genuine disconnect, absolutely. And I think that, all these things I've highlighted about the derelict states around the Isle of Man, especially in Douglas, it's very easy to criticise the government. All governments are criticised. The UK, I don't know how they get up in the morning and deal with, the government should do this and why doesn't the government do that? You'd be overwhelmed by it. But these issues I'm talking about, they've been going on for decades. And I think there are very simple fixes for some of the things in Douglas. And I would just like to think that instead of people asking questions, which I'm sorry to say is an almost total waste of time, it gives a profile, it gives you a profile, but it doesn't solve the problem. Oh, this issue's being raised in Tynwald. Well, all that happens is a civil servant gets some facts together and the minister churns it out, and that's the end of it. Like someone asking questions about all that steel, that big framework of steel in Duke Street. At the end of it all, we got facts of who the developer was and when they last did this and when they got their planning permission. But the last sentence the minister said, it's nothing to do with my department. Well,
okay.
It should be.
Wilf, you're live with Charles Gard.
Right, okay. Hello, Charles.
Hello.
Now then, I've got lots of things. I've seen lots of things around the Isle of Man, which has got to be done up or needs doing up and all the rest of it. But the thing is, I've got different versions, you see, than most people. And things only get neglected because we haven't got the tourism or the money, and for one reason only. And that reason is, well, I'll have to tell you how it works. But when I was a young fella, I took a job on at the Murdoch Lake in Ramsey. And it was absolutely loaded with people every day. Sometimes I worked from 8 in the morning till 11 at night. Now then, the wages was £4 a week. £8 a week. £8 a week, that was right. And when I got to 18, it was only a seasonal job. And when I got to 18, I thought, right, I do a lot of work here and I sort a lot of things out for them. Let's have a man's wages for a change. So I asked for a man's wages. When they came down that weekend to pay, it was written on the packet, it was £14 was a full man's wage. It was still £8. So I said, there, you'll want that. And I handed them the van the boat hook. What do I want that for? I said, well, you wanted, but all these people were waiting on the thing. I said, I've had it now, that's it. I'm going to work with my old man now. And I got on my bicycle and I'm pedaling out the thing, and I thought, this is just the time that the cheap holidays came in, going across the channel. And you could go across the channel for 20 quid. And I thought to myself there and then, if the steam packet doesn't alter their ways, tourism is finished. And as far as I'm concerned, they're the cause of it. They never put the prices down, they put them up. And then eventually, we bought the damn thing. But we still put them up. If you want people here, you make it cheap for people to get here. Then you take the money off them. But no, they do it their way. That's it. That's my version.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you. So we get people to the Isle of Man. Do you think the steam packet has, or now we own the steam packet, do you think that's a way of getting more people here? They want to get 500,000 people per season they want here, is that right?
Well, we've got a very big new boat coming in. There's going to be a lot of seats now that need to be filled. I'm not an expert on the finances of the steam packet. That complaint about the cost of getting here has been in my ears since the 60s, actually, since my parents had a hotel. So it's an issue that's always there. I remember
when I started Mannin Line in 1998, the two things were Marge Jochen calling about dog muck and Manx Airlines.
Yes.
It was the price of Manx Airlines, and be careful what you wish for. Brian, hi Brian, you're live with Charles Gard.
Hi, Charles. I've got to start by apologising to you. I'm 70 years of age now, and we've known each other for an awful long time. And I have never really, until recently, appreciated the sterling work that you do. Through visits to your site, to the Manx National Heritage site, I've gone out and visited the Calf of Man, and I've watched the videos about the story of the baby and the loss of the 30 people who were blown asunder and the Clan MacMaster. I've looked at forts, and I've looked at I've been to the top of South Barrule for the first time in my life and see our history and heritage that's there. I've been viewing the south of the island over Cronkmere Relay, all because I've been to your websites. Charles, we're losing real gems of this island, like the TT scoreboards, which breaks my heart. A part of history gone. Onken commissioners threw away the motorboats after 60-odd years. I cannot believe these things are going down the drain, and I support absolutely everything that you say. I look to the future. The Isle of Man does have a future in tourism, but only if we stop throwing away our assets. You know, you try and get on that steam train on a weekend or at any time during the week during the summer season. It is well patronised, and we're not capitalising on it, because the videos that you have produced, Charles, we should be trying to push out there and use it as advertising material to draw people to this island. 100% support for you, mate.
Well, that's very kind. I must say I'm not paying these people to come on, but you're absolutely right in everything you say. There's a danger in speaking too much about this, because the government may think that all this heritage is really only here for tourists. It is a great attraction for tourists, but actually, as you've just been pointing out, there's an awful lot of Manx people who love this as well. And I would like to see this saved for us, and the railways and the Laxey Wheel and the top of South Barrule interpreted and all these things. It's for us and for the tourists. And I don't want the government to think that if it's not viable for tourists, then it's not worth keeping, because that is not the only criterion.
Okay, thanks, Brian.
No, but when you sort, as a Manxman, I treat myself as a Manxman, even though my DNA is a mixture of everything, Anglo-Saxon, Viking, the whole lot. But I think of myself as a Manxman, and when you look at the videos and you visit the sites, and you get to my age, by gum, you start to appreciate your heritage all the more.
Okay.
Keep up the good work, for God's sake.
Thanks for that. Good to hear from you, Brian. And by the way, if you want to see Charles absolutely free of charge, you go to charlesguard.com, and there's the aerial tour of the Isle of Man. I want to ask you, Charles, why is Milltown such a success? You're, what are you,
What am I?
Yes, for your official title.
Chairman of the Trustees.
Chairman of the Trustees. Yeah. So tell me, does Milltown get any government public money?
It doesn't. No. Thank goodness it doesn't get any public money. I say that rather tongue-in-cheek because, with great respect, the last thing I would want is to be beholden to focus groups or committees in any part of government and have to get their permission. We've got 4 trustees, of which I'm one, and we just get on and do the job. We've got fantastic staff, I must say, but it's a great asset. It's a wonderful historic house, 15 acres of gardens and all the rest of it. And we're just developing it as we can.
It's prim, it's proper, it's well painted, it's well looked after. You take paying guests, you have hospitality business.
Yep.
So is that a blueprint for the future?
It could be, yes. What we do suffer from is, like all attractions on the Isle of Man, it's the small footfall. If we were Chatsworth, we would have 180,000, 200,000 a year. We would have a catchment area of millions of people. Here we don't have that, and I do sympathise with Manx National Heritage. I think they do a brilliant job advertising all their sites, and there's a danger that we, the Manx public, take these things for granted. And it's only perhaps when our friends come over and we take them on a visit to the castle or Laxey Wheel and we realise that they are amazing. And it is a struggle. It is a struggle.
Charles Gard is on Mannin Line. We're talking about our heritage, what we do for the future, how we preserve the past, and which parts we do preserve.
We all like to live in the moment. Impromptu drinks, long evenings down Kirkmichael, family barbecues.
Who fancies a dip?
Me! We like to keep our options open, but the trick to keeping your options open is actually a bit of forward planning too. Why not make a plan with your very own HSBC Relationship Manager? Talk to us about financial planning. HSBC, opening up a world of opportunity.
Investment involves risk. The amount initially invested may not be received back. HSBC Bank PLC Isle of Man branch is regulated by the Isle of Man Financial Services Authority. Visit the HSBC website for terms and eligibility requirements.
The Magazino Spectacular Relocation Sale has come to town. Marvel at the astonishing offers. Gasp in amazement at the death-defying discounts. The greatest relocation sale on earth will be appearing at Magazino in Wellington Street, Douglas, now, while stocks last. Those blessed with mechanical communication devices will find information on the Magazino Facebook page.
This year's Stage Ed West End Summer School is going to be even more magical. Because as well as the chance to work with musical theatre pros and perform in front of family and friends, you could also land a part in Aladdin, this year's Christmas pantomime at the Villa Gaiety, in association with the Department of Education, Sport and Culture. The Stage Ed Summer School, back at Ballycameen High School Studio Theatre, 24th to the 28th of July and 31st of July to the 6th of August, for all ages from 6 to 18. Visit stage-ed holidayschools.com for details and booking. Supported by Tower Insurance and your nation's station, Manx Radio.
After a brutal assessment by Manx businesses on the likelihood of government delivering its ambitious economic strategy, Perspective explores the reasons why business has so little faith in government and what needs to be done for ministers to restore confidence. 93% of respondents to the Chamber of Commerce survey were not convinced that government would deliver on their bold rhetoric, but just over half felt that if government did deliver, it would be good for their businesses. That's all on Perspective this Sunday at 12 noon on Manx Radio with me, Phil Gorn. Can Alf Cannon steady the government ship and win back confidence? Or was government's economic strategy wishful thinking and doomed from the start?
The Mannin Line with Andy Wint.
And Charles Gard's with us live till 1 o'clock. Andrew, you're live with Charles Gard.
Hello, good afternoon, Charles.
Hello.
Good afternoon. I've known the Island Railway since I first visited it in 1996, and it became an annual holiday until 2019 at the close of the season, because my partner Chris was the Ravenglass and Eskdale's diesel driver, and I was a general operating assistant. We could only get time off at the end of the season. But my point is, the year of railways should have been promoted very heavily last year, and yet it wasn't. It's no good advertising an event like this to get people to come over on a holiday. This year it's got to be done in sufficient time to get the people here. And I feel advertising is the key to getting people over. I don't know what your line would be on this.
Well, I think it's a no-brainer what you've just said. Of course, the year of railways should have been advertised last year. People are already booking now for next year's TT because they know it's going to be on. I do know that, I don't know how much I can say without embarrassing people, but I don't think the decision, the final signing off of this year's festival was made sufficiently early, and I think there was a lot of doubt about just what was going to happen, how much money would be available, and it was left too late. I would certainly agree with you there, and it's unfortunate. However, the enthusiast groups, they make a beeline for the Isle of Man every year, and they are tremendous support. So they will know it's coming, and whatever they're doing, they'll drop it to come here for that last week in July, which is going to be fantastic. And we're going to have an amazing display of rolling stock that can't be seen anywhere else in the world. You know this. It is just an astonishing piece of heritage to have. And if you think of that and the Lexi Wheel and the only horse tram surviving, the oldest continuous parliament in the world, the longest commercial shipping line in the world. This Isle of Man, it should almost be a UNESCO heritage site in its own right. It's an incredible place. And the fact that people are even thinking about wrapping these things up and getting rid of them is just criminal, in my opinion.
Yeah. You just mentioned the Laxey Wheel. As a operator of the Great Laxey Mine Railway, one of the first things we do every operating day is walk the line and then walk round the station areas picking up dog muck. It's still very much a problem. It has been for ever since this radio programme started. It was mentioned, we've got to consider what the visitor sees when they come to these sites.
Okay, all right. Thanks, Andrew. We've got to move on because we've got lots of questions included. Thanks for that. James, you're live with Charles Gard.
Hello.
Hello.
Hello. I wanted to ask, is anything ever going to happen on the Summerland site? And the other thing is the Castle Mona. Is anything ever going to be done with them?
Well, the Castle Mona is owned by the Tavere Group, and I do know that some of the work they've done recently has been absolutely brilliant. So I don't know what their plans are. They have, as you know, knocked down the old wing and the bowling alley and everything. There is some scaffolding up there at the moment. As far as I'm aware, they haven't announced any plans. I'm sure they're agonising about what to do with it. But I do hold out hope that they'll do something interesting with it. Certainly the work they've done so far on the island has been exceptionally good. As regards the Summerland site, well, you can see the problem there, that the cliff is supported by the remains of the aquadrome, and the fear is that if that's removed, the whole cliff will fall down. So that's the first technical problem any developer has, and the big sign there says it's a prime development site, but I can't see anyone taking that. As I pointed out in my video, we've got at least 30 brownfield sites in Douglas. There's a lot that needs doing.
Okay, all right. Thanks, James.
Thank you.
Good to hear from you. Before we go any further, Charles, I want to depersonalise all this because it's very tempting to get personal. And I know you try very hard not to do it. We're not knocking politicians. We're not knocking the civil service in general. What we're doing is highlighting the fact that we need to get from A to B. We have tremendous heritage assets on the Isle of Man, some of which are burnished to perfection, and some are far from it. So we're trying. So I don't want anybody to. This is not a knocking program in any way. We're trying to find a way through. I just want you to talk about some of the. And again, this is not a go at Douglas Council, but some of the messes around Douglas that need to be addressed.
Well, yes, it's certainly not knocking anybody. It's just that I do feel that the members of Tynwald, a small group could get together and say, is there anything we can do about this? I've got a few very simple, quick ideas. Down at the bottom of the hill here next to the Trafalgar, we were going to get a multi-million-pound apartment development. And they cleared out all the businesses that were there. They took all their units down, dug a big hole, and then cleared off. And we don't know who they are, or somebody does, but where are they? No apology. Now, in a case like that, could the government not get regulations so that if you're going to do a multi-million-pound development, you have to deposit a bond of £100,000 with the government, which is repayable with the appropriate interest when you've completed the development.
Nobody knows who owns the whole.
Well, somebody will. I don't know.
Yes.
There will be, obviously, on the planning application, there'll be a company name. But if you deposit that bond, which you get back when you've completed it, if you do what they've done, which is dig a hole and leave a foul mess in it and clear off, the government at least has some money that it can restore the site. It can put topsoil on and plant some grass and maybe put some nice railings around. Is that too difficult to ask? It should be a requirement. And that thing in Duke Street, did anyone ask those developers, have you actually got the money to complete this? Obviously, the planning committee don't do that, but why shouldn't there be some sort of an investigation into whether you're capable of doing it? You don't just say yes to everybody and then let them rip all the buildings down, even just begin it, just to keep the planning application open and then clear off. And then there's all the mess next to what we used to call the Villiers site, all those old trestle tables and concrete and everything. I know it's behind a fence, But imagine if I moved all that and put it on a hedgerow. I'd be prosecuted for fly tipping. But why isn't it fly tipping when it's there? Is it because it's on the land owned by the owner? But that's not the point, is it? Because if I took it and put it in the hedgerow, I'm not getting prosecuted because I'm putting it on someone else's land. I'm getting prosecuted because it's a mess. So the ownership is irrelevant. It's the mess. Surely there must be a regulation to go round these sites and clean them up. And if there isn't, then, the members of Tynwald need to get together and get some legislation in to protect us from this sort of thing.
OK, Andy, you're live with Charles Gard.
Hi, Charles.
Hello.
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 Following on from a previous caller, this is just a quickie. I wonder how many people actually realise that tomorrow, the 1st of July, is the 150th anniversary of the opening of the steam railway. There has been no advertising or anything. Any comment?
Well, there is a plaque unveiling ceremony and a big steam event at Douglas Station, which I shall be at, and the Governor will be there and special guests. So some people, the enthusiasts, the railway people, know it's happening, and His Excellency does. I hope the public can turn up.
Are you going to be there, Andy?
Unfortunately not. I have something else on tomorrow, but I didn't know anything about this at all. And if I had known, I would have been there.
OK, right, thanks for that. So it's on to what time is it on tomorrow, Charles?
Well, be there for 9:15.
OK. Just going to, thank you, Andy, going to our railway heritage. It's fair to say, Charles, that nowhere in the world, in the known globe, is there a combination of railways that is present on the Isle of Man. Am I right?
It is unique on this planet. And if that's not something to treasure and look after, I don't know what is.
Tim, hi Tim, you're live with Charles Gard.
Hello, Charles.
Hello.
I just wanted to point out, as you really, or reinforce something that you've said, and that seems to be, because I was involved in a heritage group, and we tried very hard to save all sorts of buildings, and we came up against the fact that where there is no will, the legislation actually gives no duties on government at all. That's not in prescribed conditions or circumstances. They shall do something. It's in circumstances they may do something. The department may do this, but not the department shall do this, whatever happens. And therefore, and this is presumably when the Attorney General's Department draws up this legislation, and presumably people who are interested watch this happening, the lawyers and people that know what goes on in terms of legislation and the law, when they put in this legislation with may and not shall and take all duties away, they are virtually shortchanging the people, because the people can't ask for whatever injustice or they feel is an injustice. They can do nothing about it, which is effectively what you said earlier in the programme. And I just wanted to reinforce that it is it's in legislation about the department may do something, which means if it suits them to do it, they'll do it, and if it doesn't suit them to do it, they won't.
Well, you're echoing the point I made earlier. To pull that forward to actual Tynwald debates, it's the same thing. There's no legal binding requirement on a minister to do anything that Tynwald has asked him or her to do. And gosh, the legislation on protecting our buildings is very feeble. That's what this new report from the Built Heritage Committee is all about. And this is an opportunity for members to actually grasp this nettle and properly deal with the protection of our buildings. And presumably no others will be knocked down before they get to develop this in November, one would hope. But it's sadly lacking. the protection.
Tim, thanks for calling today. We're back with Charles Gard. We're nearly out of time.
Here comes the sensational summer sale. Now on at Lifestyle Furniture, Union Mills, and our second home at Tynwald Mills. Enjoy our best ever promotional offers across our stylish and eclectic range. From sumptuous sofas and luxurious beds and mattresses to our hand-picked ranges of beautiful living, dining, bedroom and garden furniture. Plus, save 20% on exquisite art and home accessories. Brighten up your home in the Lifestyle Furniture summer sale. Now on at Snugborough Trading Estate, Union Mills, and our second home in the courtyard, Tynwald Mills.
For lunch every day of the week by the harbour in Ramsey, it's not to be missed. And if you're making plans to see your favourite bands, make the Cool Bar top of your list. At the Carvery on Sundays, you know they'll feed you well. Carl and the team hope you'll give them a bell. Just call 813045, it's the Mitre Hotel.
Time for a jog then, yes sir?
Ah, why not?
The only thing worse than the agony of toothache is the agony of waiting days to get it treated. Not anymore. Tracy Bell in Douglas and Castletown offers same-day or next-day emergency appointments from £95, whether you're registered with us or not. Toothache, broken teeth, fractured dentures, 7 days a week, Tracy Bell's dentist can help you. For emergency appointments, call 613323 or 494 327 out of hours, and we'll take the pain away.
Want to make a real difference to your home or workplace energy bills? The team at EMS Home Green have 30 years experience supplying and installing solar power and thermal systems, air and ground source heat pumps and battery storage. A complete one-stop eco-shop finding practical solutions to help you save money from day one. Call 613-210 or visit ems.co.im to arrange your no-obligation survey. EMS Home Green, for your greener home.
This coming Wednesday, celebrate Tynwald Day here on Manx Radio. We start our special programmes just after 9 o'clock with a documentary from the archives looking at King George VI's visit to Tynwald in 1945. We'll then be live at St John's to bring you coverage of all the ceremonial proceedings throughout the morning. From 2 o'clock, Howard Kane and Ruth Shimmin will bring you a flavour of the Fairfield through the afternoon, and at 5:30 we'll have a brand new edition of I Am One, our satirical look behind the scenes at the Nation Station. Tynwald Day, on air and online here on Manx Radio, this coming Wednesday, the 5th of July.
The Man in Line with Andy Wint.
And Charles Gard. What does Mr. Gard think of the desecration which took place at Derby Aerodrome, says Phil, where the DOI smashed a wrecking ball through the former barracks and all manner of other buildings, taking out the old roadway system. No thought for heritage.
What do I think? Outrageous. We have these very rare World War II remains on the Isle of Man. When I was working with the Heritage Foundation, the then chairman, Tony Brown, was brilliant. He used to be government property trustees. He managed to get 5 of the rare buildings on the airfield registered. That was something. But the GPTs later on, it was their idea to pull all those old huts down, as they call them, and get businesses there. I've been going on for years about the Bride radar stations. Those are unique now in the world. They saved tens of thousands of lives during the Second World War. I've tried to get them registered. I've put papers in, and they're just not interested. They won't do it because, I don't know, who knows why. It's just the attitude, I'm afraid.
OK, if you want to see Charles's videos, by the way, if you go to the Duke Video website, they're all there, and also charlesgard.com, the aerial view. I've just got a couple of personal things, Charles. Viking, Victorian or 20th century? What do you think is most worth saving on the Isle of Man?
Do I have to choose? They're all worth saving, right back to the Neolithic and the Bronze Age.
One of my favourite places on the Isle of Man, Cronk na Maru at Port Greenock.
Yes, fantastic. Years ago, if you look at that aerial tour, I'm flying past there on a helicopter, looking at Cronk Maru, and there was a little black thing in it. And when I landed the helicopter, or the pilot did at Ronsway, on the way home, I ran up there to see what it was, and it was a used barbecue. So that's in the film. Anyway, it is a fantastic place.
And one of the others, if you want to go to Charles's YouTube channel as well, and I must admit, I must have watched this dozens of times, because I wish I'd been to Palace View Terrace and to the the little funicular railway that went up to the Falcon Cliff. And there's a video of you on that.
There is indeed, the Falcon Cliff. It's still there. It's still hanging on a thread up in the trees, but beyond use now. That was fantastic.
And for that matter, also the Cunningham's Camp
Yes,
chairlift.
I used to ride on that. I remember paying tuppence and going up on that. I was so lucky to have been involved in tourism in those days.
So, Charles, where do we go? What do we do? I suggest everybody joins the Victorian Society for a start.
That's a very good start. But really, so many people have stopped me in the street and in the shops and stuff. Oh, you're doing this, you're doing that. And I say, yes, but please, will you lobby your MHK? It's no good leaving it to me. If I'm the only voice, they can easily ignore it. But if their constituents are being, getting in touch with them, hopefully they'd have to respond. Just don't leave it to one or two of us. That's what they're there for. That's what we're paying them for.
Okay.
Please lobby them.
And what is our duty as Manx residents? You've mentioned about taking tourists to sites. What is our duty of Manx residents? Do we have to use these sites as well?
We certainly do. We have to say we love them and turn up and use them.
Thanks for being with us today, Charles. Good to hear from you. Charles Gard. Looking at our heritage today, and you can see the two videos. Welcome back to the Isle of Man, and go to charlesgard.com and his YouTube channel as well. Next week on Mannin Live, I'm live at Tynwald Day from 9:45 talking to the politicians. Teresa Cope, the Chief Exec of Manx Cares, on Mannin Line next Thursday. In the meantime, thanks to Chris Quirk on the phones today. Say welcome to the new ship, the MV Manxman, on Sunday, and have a great weekend.